like to take a moment to welcome you all tonight. Good evening. I am going to welcome Mark McAdow. He's with Willowview United Methodist Church to come forward for our invocation. Welcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. If you would, please join me in prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this good day. We thank you, Father, for your blessing and presence in our lives today. Lord, some of us have had stressful days. Some of us have had blessed days. And in this moment, we take just an opportunity to be still in your presence, remembering your word when it says to be still and know that I am God. Father, we ask that you clear our mind and clear our thoughts tonight, that we could be present here. We thank you for those who lead us in our school system, Lord. We thank you for those who dedicate their time and their energy to being here tonight. We thank you for each person who is present. And Father, we ask for your wisdom, a wisdom that is far above our own. We thank you, Lord, that your thoughts are wiser, that your ways are higher. And so tonight, Lord, we call on you to give us the wisdom we need so that in the discussions and decisions that are made in this room, that you would be honored and that our students would be well served. We thank you, Lord, for your divine protection over us day in and day out. And we thank you for this season when we remember our Lord's passion, death, and resurrection. May we fall more in love with you as we serve you faithfully in this community. For it's in the wonderful, life-giving name of the Lord Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll call the meeting to order. Let the record show that all members are present except for Colin Abernathy and Colonel J.J. Lachinsky this evening. And we'll turn it over to Amber.
Good evening. To lead our pledge this evening, to introduce our pledge leader, I'd like to please ask Principal Jamie Jarnigan from Eisenhower Elementary School to come to the podium.
Good evening. I am here to introduce Nasim Abdullah. She is a 5th grade student in Mrs. Ogg's class at Eisenhower Elementary. Nasim's parents are Waleed and Azza Abdullah, and she has one sister, Lena, and 2 brothers, Mooney, who's also at Eisenhower, and Khalid, who's not quite old enough to go to school yet. Nasim's favorite subject in school is math. She also enjoys using the cubelets in her STEM class on Fridays. At recess, she likes to do Foursquare and play with her friends, and on weekends, her favorite activities include doing crafts and reading, and she likes to go shopping. I'm very happy and very proud to have Nasim represent and speak about Eisenhower School this evening and lead our pledge.
Eisenhower. Eisenhower is a great school that is located on the Vance Air Force Base. Our school goes from pre-K to 5th grade. We have great teachers who have their own skills and talent. Our color is blue and white, and we learn how to value and respect each other. Now I'm going to tell you the teachers, the grade, and what they learn in class. Miss Sieber teaches her students about letters, colors, and numbers. This helped them make their way to kindergarten. And Miss Smith's students in kindergarten learn about sight words. Every Friday at 9:30, 5th graders come to meet to read to their kindergarten buddy. They learn how to work together by having stations with lots of teamwork games. Working together help them make their way to 1st grade. In Miss Ingham's 1st grade class, students learn to read some chapter books. Every month they have a Thunder Reading Challenge. The one to read with the most minutes at home wins a prize. That includes a mark with the OKC Thunder team. Miss Dull teaches her 2nd grade class how to research facts about animals. Read to self is also one of the most important parts in reading. Most students read chapter books by now. In math, they learn about fractions. Fractions is counting part of something. In 3rd grade, Miss Inselman teaches her students to learn their multiplication facts and how to write sentences. Miss Lauder teaches her 4th graders how to estimate division and all about geometry. In 5th grade, We learned many different topics with Miss Ogg, which includes surface area and math, the solar system, and the Revolutionary War. As a class, we read history books like Blood on the River, The Witch of Blackbird Pond, and even Sophia's War. In language art, we make a 5-paragraph essay with facts, not opinions. If you don't know how to make a 5-paragraph essay, it starts with an introduction, topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, and a conclusion. We also have a quote that I think I should tell you. All things are difficult before they are easy. And most and above all, Eisenhower is where I learned how to speak English, to make it my second language. We are the Eisenhower tribe, and we will reach our goals. Thank you very much.
You're wonderful.
And if you would please stand now for our presentation of colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a certificate for our spotlight student.
Has your name on it. You did a very nice job. We appreciate you coming and talking to us today, okay? Thank you.
All right, turn around there, and we'll let Dad get a picture, and Amber as well. All right, good job.
Great job. Next, I'd like to introduce Dudley Darrow, principal of Enid High School, to introduce our secondary spotlight student.
Good evening. It's my privilege to honor or introduce Ella I said it all wrong. I already said it wrong. I'm sorry. Ella Alquitas, excuse me. But she's going to be our valedictorian this year for the 2018 class. She's
Hey.
Ella is currently sitting with a 4.21 GPA. She's already earned 21 credit hours through concurrent enrollment. She's earned 9 hours. The other 12 have been through AP courses. She's taking 4 AP courses right now, so she's got the opportunity to earn some more college credit here in the next couple weeks. She's been very active in our soccer and our basketball programs. And the one thing that I'm really proud of Ella about is that she's finishing strong. As I said, her senior year, she's taken 4 AP classes. She's not taking an easy way out. She's finishing strong. She's got future plans. We don't know if we're going to go to college just yet, but our long-term goal is to be a surgeon. So I'll let you say a few words, Ella.
Hi, I'm Ella Alquitas, and I transferred to Enid High from OBA 4 years ago. And through the years, I've utilized the high school's many opportunities to earn college credit, such as their AP and concurrent courses. I'm very thankful for the advantages that Enid High has provided for me, as well as its staff who has made my high school experience very enjoyable. Thank you.
We have a certificate for you too, and we'll get a picture. there, Mr. Darrow.
We'll look at Amber here and get a picture. Thank you for being here.
All right, well done.
Thanks for having me.
We have a very special recognition this evening. The boys and girls swim team from Enid High School. They have had an excellent season in the pool and in the classroom, especially fantastic showing at conference. So at this time, I would like to introduce Coach Lindsay Watts to tell us about their season and to introduce her athletes.
First of all, thank you so much for recognizing all of the hard work that our students do both in the classroom and in the pool. This year, our girls earned the Distinguished Academic Award from the OSSAA for being in the top 5 in our class, so let's get a round of applause for our girls. And then both our boys swim team and our girls swim team were the Big Ten Conference champions this year, which is a huge accomplishment. I'm going to call each of you guys up. I'll do the girls team first, and then I'll say a couple of things once they're up here. And we'll take a photo before you guys go back, and then we'll go on to the boys, okay? All right, first I'm going to call up Alyssa Arambula, RC Bierig. Oh, I should wait.
That's okay. Come on over this way.
This is RC. Stay. You have to stay. Sorry, no, you may not sit down. Nicole Bushman. Olivia Crawford. I don't think Allie Glasgow made it tonight. Allie Glasgow? And Mimi Glasgow also, but Carolyn Godwin, Alex Hernandez, Jolie Holcomb, we're going to end up crowding anyway. Victoria Lucas, Caitlin Miller, Tatum Moulton, Lizzie Ostermeyer, Sydney Rogers, Emma Rose, Daniela Sanchez, Morgan Truluck, Faith Volsky. I didn't see Caroline. Is Caroline here? Caroline Zendejas. So these are our girls that participated both at the conference meet and some of them at the state meet. As mentioned, we were the Big Ten Conference champions, and all of these girls participated in that swim meet. In addition to that, we have Caitlin Miller, Daniela Sanchez, Alyssa Arambula, Emma Rose, Lizzie Ostermeyer, and Carolyn Godwin that participated in our Oklahoma State swim meet. And while they were there, Carolyn Godwin won 2 individual medals and was named to our all-state team. So an extra round of applause for all of those accomplishments.
Coach, you also get a
Oh,
certificate.
thank you.
Because, I mean, you do a lot of hard work, of course.
No, they do the hard work. I do the easy stuff. Okay, we're gonna have people in the front and stuff, you know. You don't look like this is your first rodeo tonight.
Great job, ladies. Very proud of you.
All right, and on to the boys. Our first boy we have is Daniel Cho. Blake Heiberger. Alex Kim. Nicholas Pennywell. Connor Sloan. Andrew Fletcher. Joshua Sturgeon. And Derek Whittington. Our boys' team is smaller. Speedos scare people, I don't know why. Thank you. Thank you. As I mentioned, these boys all participated in the Big Ten Conference Championships. They don't even wear Speedos. Well, one of them does, but he likes them. He does. It's his choice. They were our Big Ten Conference champions, and in addition to that, the following boys made the state swim meet. Blake Heiberger, Andrew Fletcher, Connor Sloan, Daniel Cho, Derek Whittington, Joshua Sturgeon, and Alex Kim. And then a lot of our boys medaled as well this year. Blake earned 3 medals and was named to the All-State team. Andrew earned 2 medals, Connor earned 2 medals, Derek earned 1 medal, Josh earned 1 medal, and Alex earned 1 medal. And the biggest accomplishment of all, I'm sorry, Carolyn, I forgot to mention, we had 2 Enid High School records set this year. Carolyn broke the record in the 100 butterfly. That was a record that has been standing since 1995. Wow. So a big round of applause for that. And then our boys 200 medley relay broke a record from 1988. Wow, so very big round of applause for them. Okay. You ready? Proud.
Come on, short kids.
You guys won't look as cute doing this in the front.
Find a pocket.
Yes, fill the pocket. I like that. Fill the pocket.
Thank you.
Congratulations, guys. Very proud of you.
Thank you again.
All right, and we have one final presentation before we move on the agenda. And I'm going to ask our board president to step down there. And Amber, if you'll step up there, our board president is going to present Amber Fitzgerald, our executive director of HR and communications, with a district coin, and let me tell you why. You all know that Thursday we had a very hectic night, and on into Friday, dealing with the social media threats and things like that. And Amber really went above and beyond that night and all through the night. And just so happened, she was, one time a year, she goes down and helps her parents with the big farm auction. And she was already in Weatherford, Oklahoma, getting ready to help her parents. the next day and ended up turning around and driving back late, I guess early the next morning, wasn't it? But many of us didn't get much sleep that night, and Amber helped us through that, and as she always does, and probably everybody in the room knows, she goes above and beyond all the time. But I wanted to publicly recognize you, Amber, for all of your hard work late last week. Let's give her a hand, please.
Did you have someone getting a picture of Amber?
Oh, yeah, Sam, could you take a picture of them? Yeah.
Because you know we've got to.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, pull it a little closer to you. Just barely can hear you. Mark, if you can increase her volume a little bit, maybe that'll help.
We're moving down to item 2. We didn't have any audience to visitors this evening, so we'll move right on to number 3, our superintendent's report.
All right, and first up is our monthly construction report. Michael Shuck is here for that. You have that effect on people, don't you? Yeah. Mass exodus when you step up to the mic, sir.
I know I'm not good at this, but I mean, really?
Board members, you've got a number of handouts there. The one that says State of School Finance, all of that behind that document we won't get to until Sam and Carl's part, but all of the other documents that we're going to work through in the superintendent's report are there in that other stack, and we'll start off with Michael's construction report.
Okay. Let's start with Coolidge and Monroe. Last board meeting, you guys approved the construction contract there with Ben Hayes Construction. We just had a pre-construction meeting with them today, so we've kicked this project off. The work will probably begin on Coolidge over the spring break. They'll get in there and start demolishing some of the areas there that they're going to start construction on. And we'll be working on Monroe probably after the end of school. So that's been kicked off and going pretty good. We've got Garfield, which is still working on the east addition where we've got the exterior finishes, moving ahead there. We have the interior signage and restrooms working on over on the west addition, and millwork's progressing in both of them. And I think we're supposed to be starting some flooring over there, so we're probably on that east addition. So that's moving along pretty well, finishing up nicely. Longfellow, we just reviewed the final drawings with the architect. The drawings should be available for bid March 23rd, and the bids, we're setting a bid at April 17th. Waller, another one of our projects that's under construction, moving along pretty well. The cafeteria steel, that installation continues. The band room sheathing is going on. And no, that's not the final color. Already been asked that question. The green's really pretty, but that's not what we're doing. Not changing the school colors either. That was asked too. But it's moving along pretty well there. The interior, the project Lead the Way room, we've continued a little bit of demolition. We've demolished a lot of extra electrical work, and we're coordinating with the electrician over there to get some of that installed. We'll have a lot of computers and different things in there, so there's a lot going on there. The high school, the parking lot, it's been striped, and we've went over and punched the project, and it's substantially complete. It'll be ready for the students on the first day after spring break. So that's a big woohoo, yay. The dirt work continues. So you've seen the big pad. If you've walked by it, you can see that the pad is building up, and the pad is done. It's been tested, so we're ready to move on from that. Over spring break, we're going to have a lot of the utility work done, and a lot of switchovers of some of the utilities. What you see there is the gas pipe that we've run down over the building. We're going to be putting a new meter in there for the gas, the water, and sewer, storm sewer, has been covered up here in this image. So, and we'll be making those changeovers over spring break. There's a construction camera up that our IT department has put in place. I'm not sure if it's up on our website just yet, but you can see the address there, which is kind of funny, so I won't repeat it.
I think we've got 2 cameras set up, one on top of the high school building and then one on top of the university center. Is that right?
Yeah, so you kind of see it from both directions. And I was told the little button there in the lower left, I think if you click that, it'll show a time lapse. So that's, you can see it.
Mark, can we play that or not? Maybe we're not ready for that, but.
I've got one section here that we can talk about, and then maybe he could put it up after that.
Okay. If not tonight, well, maybe next month we can show them that time lapse, because it really is pretty interesting to see how the development of the pad that is basically the foundation for the building was kind of built up over time. So maybe we'll watch that next month.
Yeah, and it'll get better and better as it goes, because they
will see it rise up out of the ground.
Right.
That'd be great.
You'll see me and Craig out there running around pointing at stuff. So the next thing I wanted to do is go through a little bit of what our security and safety upgrades have been in the bond issue. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that, some emails that have come back and forth, so we wanted to address that, kind of give you an update, because that's a large part of what the bond issue is about. So I'll just go through some of these key things that we're working on and where we are on those. The first one was access controls. I want to say that all of our buildings have access controls of some sort. We're currently adding access controls to a majority of them, a large majority of them. Most of those are playground doors. We realized that the teachers had to prop doors open when they took their students out, because their student had to go to the restroom or something like that. You had to be able to let them back in, and some of them might not have had a key to that door. So we're going to put card access there so that door can remain locked. We're also working on a big part of it is secure entries. We have 9 buildings that currently have a security entry. We have 2 of them that are currently under construction. That's Coolidge and Monroe that we talked about earlier. We have 2 that are bidding, have 4 in the planning stage. We didn't necessarily have them called out in the bond issue, but I think Dr. Floyd and our construction team made a commitment to get that done with the funds that we have. The security cameras in our schools, we have 10 of those projects that have been completed. 4 of those are currently bidding, and 2 of them will be continued with the construction. I think that's Adams is one, and I forget the other. But we're moving pretty good on those. And we're also trying to enclose a lot of our playgrounds in the elementary level. We have 9 of our playgrounds that are currently enclosed, have 3 of them that aren't. The high school, we're also doing some other things there. We're looking at options for security entry / welcome center to find a different way to get in through there. We've also looked at off comments at potential for metal detectors. We've talked to different manufacturers, other school districts that have metal detectors, and talked through the installation of that process. So we're doing a little research into that. The other thing you'd ask about here, I think last time, was our locks, whether or not we knew what kind of locks we had in our classrooms. So we went through a majority of all of our schools right now to analyze that. We haven't got through all of them just yet, but we have determined that we've got what we call a classroom intruder function on most of our doors, most of our locks in our classrooms. That type of function, that specific arrangement was designed after the Columbine incident. So that's a key on both sides. And we found out that most of them are in pretty decent shape, that they're all pretty well functional. There are some oddities in places. There's some old ones that have maybe a deadbolt or storage closets that might be a little bit different from that. But in general, we have the keyed on both sides, and they're in good condition. So I think that's what I have if you have any other questions.
I remember a conversation about the possibility of adding covers on windows. Is that a continuing conversation? For example, for intruder drills to cover the windows quickly, something that all teachers across the board have in their classrooms and access to?
Yeah, we've been looking into that. We're still researching it though, because we haven't found anything very specific that would work yet. And then where most teachers already cover it with either some sort of paper or drapery, but we haven't found that yet. But we're continuing to research that.
Anybody else?
I just want to make a comment. I appreciate the update on all of that because it's obviously a very important topic in everybody's mind. As a parent in this district, not just a school board member, I will say I think that the security of every single one of our schools needs to be top priority for our principals, and making sure that all of their teachers' doors lock and that they are doing the drills, which I know they are, but just making sure that our students understand that in a situation we are prepared. So I just ask that we continue that as a district.
Yeah, and added to that, obviously safety and security is on everybody's minds after the Florida incident. But because of that, we have sent a number of our people to some emergency and crisis management training and planning sessions, and so we'll be bringing that information back and putting together revisions to our current plans based on that training as well. So good point, and obviously on everybody's mind. So want to make sure that we keep both our students and our employees as safe as possible. Anybody else for Michael? Thank you, sir. All right, next up, we have another committee chair report from our strategic plan, and that is the Personnel and Professional Development Committee. And Randy Rader and Matt Holson are chairing that committee. So we'll ask, is Matt here, or you got it by
yourself? I don't think he was able to make it tonight.
All right, got Randy Rader.
You guys are stuck with me.
Okay.
You do have a handout here. I'm not going to read it for you word for word, but on the personnel and professional development, the specific results that we have that we are working towards are to retain and grow quality teachers and support staff. I think a couple things to highlight there are the retention bonus that we were able to do last month. We feel very confident with that. We feel good about being able to do that. We also like the fact that we've been able to do a PD flex day. We know teachers give a huge amount of time outside of their school day, and so being able to allow them to trade off some of those days and those hours back during the school year and contracted professional development days, I think has been very beneficial. I think we saw about 200 to 250 of our teachers take advantage of that this year, which I'm glad they were able to do that. The creating an ongoing professional development calendar for all. We've actually had that in place now probably for about 2 years. And just like anything else, as we put it into place and make a few changes to it, it's become more robust. We were able to add all kinds of technology this summer, or training this summer. Technology did a great job. I've listed some of the ones that they've been able to offer. EPS Connect, obviously training over Chromebook. Google, that's a platform we continue to use, and Google continues to expand, so we continue to train in it as much as we can. Smartboard, Mastery Connect. We've also offered summer PD and Great Expectations. We had a small training here last year, and then we're going to obviously host a bigger regional event here in Enid, and I think we've already got about 90 teachers signed up for that. We're excited about that since that's a district-wide push as well. And then Literacy First. Every year we do host a Literacy First training here for our teachers, and we will continue to do that as well. So teachers are taking advantage of that, and then we, of course, continue to do PD throughout the school year as well. Recruit quality teachers and support personnel. Obviously, Amber in the HR department has done an outstanding job of that, and they continue to do that. And that's just a struggle that we're in these days with teacher retention and everything else. And in a district this size, we're always going to have turnover because of retirement and different things like that. But we were able to fill every teaching position last year, and we filled them with very quality teachers, and we feel good about that. The last one is one that is probably the most difficult target to hit, and that's to grow culturally diverse instructional and support personnel reflecting the needs of our community. We're starting to see that through our teacher cadet class, and we feel like with the scholarship that's paying for teachers or kids to go to school and come back to Enid, we hope to see some of that. But that's in its infant stages, and I think in 3 or 4 years we're going to start seeing some of those teachers come back, and we're excited about that. The highlights. We have several teacher support appreciation programs, and I am going to read through those. The district coin, which you saw Amber get, I think that's been a really good program. Teachers and support staff and business leaders, I think, appreciate that. K&H Financial Back a Teacher, TPI Amazing Teacher, the Kurt Wright Honda Emerging E Award, where they get to borrow a car for a month, has been a very big deal as well. The Chamber Enid for Kids, and then the Teacher Attendance Award that we've been able to do as well. All of these things are just to really say thank you to our teachers, which we never can do enough of. The EPS Teacher Job Fair is always very well organized, and we have good attendance at that. We also do the EPS Support Job Fair. And then again, the highlight of the PD Flex Days, and I think we'll be able to continue to grow that program. And I feel like our strategic plan in this area has been, we've done very well with that. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
On the grade expectations, do you know if every school in our district now has someone that has been GE trained?
I would say we probably do.
Yeah.
I don't know that specifically, but we've done enough training over the years that I would say probably so. We had a pretty good contingent from the middle schools and high schools last year. After this summer, I would definitely say we will have, and we're a long ways from 100%, but this 90 that goes this summer will be a good push. And then we have several of our elementary schools that have, I would say, 90 to 100% of their staffs trained. So.
And then also the interview training for NWOSU teacher interns. Can you tell me what that is? Because
Amber, would you like to say something about that? Amber gets credit for a lot of the personnel stuff. I'm not gonna lie to you.
It's one of my, I do it twice a year, in the fall and in the spring. Two of my very favorite days. We just go up and we have just a real open and honest, they can ask me anything. We help prepare them to go out to begin their teaching career. Obviously, I talk to them a lot about Enid Public Schools and about our process. And as a result of that, they've actually put together an advisory council for their education department, and they've asked us to have a representative on that council. And we're looking to build relationships. Obviously, Northwestern is one of our very near and dear partners, but certainly want to be a resource to other universities as well if we can help their education students.
thank you.
Amber's also sent a pretty good, probably the hardest part about developing this was not to cram it so full of information that it was busy and you wouldn't read it, because I think we're doing a lot of good things. So thank you all.
I agree with that, and I feel really good about where this committee is headed. And Randy, I appreciate you providing that report to us tonight, and also feel good about the overall strategic plan. And I know I say this all the time, but the end result of developing that plan was to provide the district with a roadmap for going down the pathway to achieve what was agreed upon, that the direction that we need to head down. So this is just another example of that, and I think we're making great progress toward achieving those areas. So appreciate that. Thank you, Randy. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Darrow to step back up to the mic. The next handout you have there, it says 2018-19 Enid High School. This really kind of falls under the strategic planning process, but this, what Dudley's going to talk about is administrative, so it doesn't take any board action, but mainly we just wanted to provide you a little information with a change to his start time over there at the high school for next year.
Sure. The one major thing that we go back to on this a lot is that our current bill schedule, we actually provide lunch during our 4th hour.
Is that microphone on?
Okay.
There you go.
Man.
You don't want Mark to have to come from behind the curtain to fix you up.
No,
so,
I'm not even on the agenda. I'll get out of here. But the big thing is that currently our fourth hour has 70 minutes, and we try to embed all 3 lunches within the fourth hour. And what we're really looking at, as you can look at that schedule there, is that we're going to stagger the 3 lunches. That's going to allow about 18 minutes, I believe, in between each lunch. That's going to allow our cafeteria ladies time to go clean out the entire lunchroom. Because I'll be honest with you, by the end of the 3rd lunch, it gets pretty dirty in there. We're going to be able to clean out the lunchroom. We're also going to be able to stock fresh food as well. Another thing that we're looking at that we stole from another 6A school is that first bell schedule is the freshman bell schedule. So we're going to use that for a transition event. As you all know, the freshman year is one of the biggest years for a high school student, and having a good transition year is going to set the next 3 years a lot of times for success, or unfortunately sometimes for failure. So we think that'd be a good opportunity to get those freshmen together. And then what we're going to do with that 20 minutes that we're taking away from the fourth hour is we're going to have a later start day. All 7 of our classes will still go 50 minutes, but we'll be using our time better and have better time management for our teachers and our students. Our ultimate goal is that we'll have a department meeting for all 4 core areas and special education once a week, and we'll also have an individual PLC meeting for that teacher once a week. So an example would be if I was teaching geometry in high school, I would go to my Tuesday math meeting with the department. That's just the whole math department, all 12 teachers. And then on Thursday, I would go to my geometry individual PLC meeting. That might have 3 to 4 teachers. So we'll be vertically aligning within the department, but on that separate, we'll have horizontal alignment. So obviously benefits both ways as far as data disaggregation and tracking as our students go up further. I met with Autry several times. I think we're good to go there. That schedule definitely will work for both AM and PM Autry students. Actually, last week met with the NOC president and several other vice presidents, and they're looking at going to a later start time too, to the 8:30. So we should not have any problems there. Transportation should not have any issues as well as that. Another side note that I might add when we're talking to other school districts, one of the big benefits, and I think our students could benefit from this as well, is that a lot of our students have younger siblings. And by doing this, if you have an elementary child, which I have 2, you can't drop them off until 7:30. So a lot of our older siblings that go to the high school can drop their younger siblings off at elementary, middle school, and still have time to get back to the high school and not be later or tardy. We'll still serve breakfast, have a little bit of longer serving breakfast period. And also, one side note is this will give us a little bit better designated time for Stuco, academic bowl, and other activities as well. But I met with the staff several times about this. In fact, we've got a little committee that we meet about once a month, and we're still tweaking it and still altering a little bit of it. But we feel pretty confident about it going forward.
So, Dudley, just to be clear, so teachers would have from 7:45 to 8:30?
Yes, sir.
That would be the core meetings?
Right.
Department meetings?
Yep.
Okay.
And also, when those teachers aren't meeting, we'll allow times for student tutorials for them to come in and get caught up. Okay. Whether I'm behind, I can go see Mr. Darrow in my geometry class, or if I'm going to be gone next week and I've got to get this assignment done, I can go in and get either accelerated or remediated, whatever we need to do.
And then the first bell rings at 8:30?
I think so. That's the tardy bell, and then the actual bell will start the class to be 8:35.
Well, I like this. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
We've got a lot of different opinions, and we've hashed it out several times as a group, but we feel pretty confident about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good plan.
The thing that you mentioned there too is that's one of the complaints that we do get at the high school is we offer Wake Up Wednesday, but it's not always that teacher. So if Dudley's in class, it may not be that individual teacher that I can go to the lab and get help with. This will allow each teacher to work with their students 2 to 3 times a week.
Well, and I think the lunch schedule, having the freshmen together is an excellent idea. And then, 11:30, 12:18, 1:14, those are all reasonable. Sometimes we can get early or late.
Mm-hmm.
I think those are all reasonable lunch periods.
One of the points that came out of conversations was we had an opportunity to either move the lunches up earlier or later. And some of the feedback that I got in one of our meetings was our staff opted for the later lunch. And they said, Mr. Darrow, 80% of our kids are free and reduced lunches. So 80% of our students get 2 meals a day. So we don't want them at 8 o'clock and at 10 o'clock. We would rather have the good meal at 8 o'clock. The worst case scenario would be 1 o'clock. That's 2 good meals for our kiddos.
Yep.
And I think we'll make some adjustments with our staff, but we should work it out okay.
Yep. I say good job. This was good.
Well, thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Darrell? Good job, Dudley. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next you've got a copy of our latest enrollment, and enrollment currently stands district-wide at 7,841. Just a reminder, board members, about our Region 3 school board training coming up, what is that, Thursday of this week, and we're going to go over to Pond Creek Hunter, so we don't have very far to go, but I believe everyone is signed up to go except for our board president. It's all right, you get a demerit, but that's okay.
I will be relaxing on the beach.
Oh, well, excuse us. Okay, must be nice. Send us pictures. But for those of you that are attending, myself and Sam and Carl will all three be going as well. And we've got 2 school vehicles reserved, so we'll meet here out in this building and then leave from out front at about, what do we say, 4:30 on Thursday. Okay, well, I forgot to mention back to the strategic planning that next month we'll have the extracurricular opportunities chairpersons reporting, and that will be Candace Wojciechowski, Rob Mills, and Bill Mayberry are in charge of that committee. Next is I wanted to remind everybody that next is the secondary addition, deletion of interscholastic athletic programs, and I'll ask Mr. Stafford to say a word about this, please.
All right, so this policy FMFDA is the secondary addition, deletion of interscholastic athletic programs. And so one of the things that we know is important on our strategic plan is that we continue to look at ways to increase extracurricular opportunities. And in doing so, we want to make sure that we're taking into account student interest. And as student interests change and we gather data, we want to have a process in place for the addition or the deletion of interscholastic athletic programs. And so our purpose basically is to survey our students and our parents and to have a process in place so that we can look at the addition or deletion of athletic opportunities. So we will conduct a survey every other year to 6th through 12th grade students. They'll have the opportunity to fill out a survey, and we will be able to garner that information and look to see what possible additions or deletions we need to make to our interscholastic activities. One of the things that this is missing, and on the second reading we will include, would be a piece regarding a parent or student petitioning for the addition or deletion of an activity. This policy, specifically on the first reading, is about the survey piece, and so this would be about looking at the survey results and making that decision. Potential deletions or additions will be based on the following criteria. So we have 9 criteria, everything from student community interest, making sure that we have proportionality between males and females, making sure that it's a conference-sponsored activity with our peer districts. It would also have to be recognized by OSSAA. Making sure that we have the facility, grounds, and availability for that new activity, looking at staffing and funding, and making sure that it meets the goals of our district. And then, of course, our priority will be to equalize opportunities for both males and females when doing so. The second page on B basically outlines that the activity director would take this information from the survey, present it to a designee who would then submit to the superintendent, and then it would go to the school board for review and action. If a activity meets the 9 criteria for adding, they'll be successive in nature. So our plan would be that we would start at the middle school level in bringing these new athletic programs to Enid Public Schools, and then each year continuing to add to that so that we could have junior varsity and varsity teams as well as we move up. Once implementation is in place, the school board timeline is 60 days from the receipt of the request to approve whether or not we're going to add or delete a specific activity. And then from there, the school board will be responsible for identifying sources to fund the new interscholastic activity, and of course looking at the coaching sponsor stipends, maintenance of facilities, transportation, and any other startup costs such as uniforms or anything else related to that activity. And then on the back page of 3 of 3 basically is just a registry of the interscholastic activities in which we offer now, both at the high school level and the middle school level.
I'll say a couple words, and then we'll open it up to any questions. First off, what precipitated the initiation of this was to make sure that we are compliant with OCR rules and regulations for when and if a large group of students via a student survey said they had interest in adding X, Y, and Z sport. We needed to have a policy in place for that process. Now, obviously, just because a group of students say they want to start a new sport doesn't necessarily mean we're going to implement that sport or approve it, but there needed to be a policy and procedures in place for that process should it take place. And as you all know, anytime we initiate a new board policy, not just a revision to a policy, but a new board policy, it's a two-step process, a first reading 1 month and then a second reading the second month. So this is just information only this month and a first reading only. We'll have it on the board agenda next month for a second reading and a recommendation for approval. So again, just because we have this process in place and this policy in place doesn't necessarily mean we're adding any new sports, but it'll at least provide us with some guidelines if at a later time we need to do that. Questions for Mr. Stafford or myself?
Yeah, just one. Doug, who will be ultimately responsible for creating and administering the survey? Will that be your office?
Yes. With the help of the activity director and the 2 athletic directors, we put together a survey that will also go for OCR review, and if it's appropriate, then we will probably do that in electronic format where the students on their one-to-one devices will be able to fill out that survey so that we make sure and get a good cross-reference of all of our students, and so that's how it will be conducted.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Where does cheer and pom fall under? Are they not listed because they don't do it conference, but they compete OSSAA? I was just curious.
Right. So we have 50 high school students who are in cheer and pom combined, and then we have 30 middle school cheer and pom combined for about 80 students on our count. In looking at the civil rights guidance, we do not follow or have met the guidelines to include them in our count because we don't compete at the level that is required in order for them to be counted as part of the total. POM does compete somewhat. Cheer has not, competed at a state level. And so we will not be including those numbers in our final count. But to answer your question, cheer is OSSAA sponsored, POM is not.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir. Okay, board members, you see there on item F, special board meeting May 8th of this year at noon. It is, of course, that's roughly 2 months away, but we are nearing the time period where, again, we need to sell some school bonds. And we met with Ron Fisher, our financial advisor, last week, and we have scheduled for that day to open bids for those sale of bonds, and then shortly thereafter, I think that's like 11:30 that day, and then we'd like to convene a short board meeting at noon here in this room on May the 8th to approve the sale of those bonds, and then also I believe we'll have some Waller project bids ready as well.
Longfellow.
Oh, Longfellow, okay. So I have 2 items for that special board meeting. does anybody know right offhand that they will not be able to make that? Just want to make sure we're going to have a quorum. We're a couple months away, but we're good. Start at 12. Yeah, we open the bids at 11:30, but the board meeting won't be until noon. All righty, and next up, we're ready for the next one. Oh, I guess that's me. I'm sorry. The next item is discussion, then possible action to approve a resolution in support of legislative action for a significant teacher and support personnel raise. And so I'd like to read for the record the resolution, and then I'll be recommending approval of our board of that resolution. So the resolution reads as follows, and board members, you have a copy of that at your place. Whereas the Board of Education supports public school teachers and the work that they do educating the children of our school district, and whereas the Board of Education understands that Oklahoma public school teachers are frustrated with the lack of pay, and as a result, the state is experiencing an extreme shortage of qualified teachers throughout Oklahoma, and whereas school districts have increasingly turned to the use of long-term substitute teachers and emergency certified teachers to educate students, and whereas the low pay provided by the state of Oklahoma for public school teachers has led to students not being able to receive an education from highly qualified and certified teachers, and whereas the Oklahoma legislature is the governing body that dictates funding to public school districts, and whereas the Board of Education supports a salary increase for public school teachers and support personnel, be it therefore resolved that the Board of Education hereby encourages the Oklahoma legislature to find dedicated sources of revenue that can be utilized to fund a much-needed recurring salary increase that will be provided to public school teachers and support personnel in Oklahoma. Adopted this 12th day of March 2018, and it'll be signed by the President and the Board Clerk. So board members, I would recommend approval of that resolution tonight.
Second.
Motion by Willa Jo Fowler, second by Tori Turnbow. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes.
Thank you very much. All right, I think I already mentioned the reminder about leaving at 4:30 on Thursday for those that are going to the board training, and I think that's all I have, Madam President.
All right, thank you. And that takes us down to regular business, and item A, the discussion and possible action to approve the following consent agenda items, which we can take all in one motion.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Trent.
Second.
Second by Willa Jo. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. That takes us to the discussion and possible action to approve the district financial report for February 2018.
I want to back up to item 3. That really is, was that part of the consent or separate? Oh, never mind. You already approved that. Yeah. My bad. Sorry. No, we're good.
All right, then that takes us to item B, discussion and possible action to approve the district financial report, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Wright.
Board members, you have a copy of a PowerPoint presentation there that says State of School Finance. Carl provided this presentation at the legislative breakfast we had Friday morning. We did have 2 of our legislators there, Representative Pfeiffer and Senator Peterson. The other 2 representatives were not there, but he ran through this presentation for them, so I asked him if he would do the same for the board meeting tonight, and then he'll get to the rest of the finance report.
We'll run through this very quickly. There is a great deal of information in these slides, and I hope to provide a little information to help you understand those. First of all, Article 13 of the Oklahoma Constitution establishes and maintains a public education system. Specifically, and I'm going to read this word for word with some added emphasis, the legislature shall establish and maintain a system of free public schools wherein all children of the state may be educated. that kind of underpins everything we're going to be talking about here in a few moments. This very first slide, there we go, indicates the problem we are in and looks at it from an historical perspective, starting about the time that we finished receiving the federal stimulus dollars that were imparted to us from the federal government after the Great Recession that began in 2008, 2009. There are several things going on in this graph that I'd like to point out. One is the dollars that are provided on a state appropriated basis. This is the money that is flowing through our state formula. In 2010, that was $1.977 billion. In 2017, it is $1.828 billion. During the time that we lost ground in terms of total funding, we also experienced a huge increase in the number of students, which is illustrated with two terms that I want to define for you first and then use the acronym that's commonly used. The first number is what we call average daily membership. Membership is the students that are on our rolls, whether they are at school that day or not. And the reason we use membership is because we keep a student on the rolls for the entire year as long as they don't miss 10 days in a row. If they miss 10 days, then they're removed from the rolls and no longer counted. The reason for this is that we're obligated to provide a place for them in class and curriculum and instruction for them. So average daily membership has been increasing since the 2010 year. That is illustrated by that orange line that's gradually going up at an angle, rising from left to right. The second number is, or the second thin line is a green line, and that is representing weighted average daily membership, or WADM. That takes into account the additional weights that are added for students that are members of certain categories, such as economically disadvantaged, or English language learners, or special education students that require an IEP, or gifted students. They all have weights that take into account the fact that they are more expensive to educate. So our weighted ADM has been increasing, as well as our regular ADM. If you divide in 2010 the average daily membership, or ADM, into the total dollars that are provided through state appropriations, that gives you a figure of $3,051.57 per student. If you divide the total ADM in 2017 into the total dollars provided, that gives us $2,661.51 per student, or a loss in per student funding of $390.05. That's why we're having trouble keeping our head above water and competing with our neighboring states for teachers. Okay? The next slide just very quickly illustrates the 7 sources of revenue that are taken into account in our state funding formula. It's not just state appropriated dollars that are counted. Our formula is referred to as an equalization formula. It takes into account local ad valorem taxes, county 4-mill taxes, state school land earnings, gross production tax, motor vehicle collections, Rural Electric Association taxes, and then the last one is the one we just talked about, which is state appropriated revenue. The more wealthy a school district is locally, the smaller amount of state aid they get. So it is an equalization formula designed to guarantee a basic per student amount for all students. Okay, the next slide gives you an illustration of kind of the proportion of those 7 sources of revenue. As you can see, the appropriations that go through the formula from the legislature is the dark blue graph or bar. Then ad valorem taxes. By the way, state aid for Enid Public Schools is our largest single source of revenue. And then the orange bar illustrates our ad valorem taxes. That is Enid's second largest source of revenue. We're clearly a formula school. Next then is motor vehicle taxes, school land earnings, and the others that I just cited. So this gives you a proportionality and illustrates graphically how those fit together in the formula. The next graph shows the total recurring revenue for funding education in the state. When you take into account all of the revenue, both what comes from the state legislature and the state dedicated, county and local revenue, as well as federal dollars, and Enid gets a significant amount of federal dollars, in total that's $5.1 billion. Okay? The next graph illustrates something that's been going on since about 2010. Most school administrators that are prudently managing their funds are growing their fund balances to take into account the fact that we are having some interruptions in some of our state dedicated and some of our appropriated revenues. This has been happening here in Enid, and that's one of the reasons that we've been able to give the signing bonus for next year, is because we developed an adequate fund balance to be able to do this. The next graph illustrates statewide district expenditures. Those have been clearly climbing upward throughout that time period from 2010 to 2016. Ending with about $5.149 billion, as we just indicated, up from about $4.9 million in 2010. The next is a graphic illustration of the number of English language learners from 2010-11 school year to 2015-16. As you can see, that has increased by approximately 10,500 students. Obviously, that increase represents more resources that need to be spent on assisting those students to learn the language so that they can learn the subject material that is conveyed to them in English. The next one indicates the increase in students on IEPs since the 2010-11 school year. As you can see there, we have had an increase of about 12,130 students that are on IEPs. Some of those IEPs range from as simple as being able to access a resource room all the way up to requiring full-time paraprofessionals to be with the students with extreme disabilities for the whole day. The next slide illustrates district-wide expenditures for various of the functions within our classification system. And as you can see, the largest share is for direct classroom instruction, and then support services would be the second largest. And then we are considering, by the way, general funds, building funds, and child nutrition funds. So administration, facility acquisition and construction, as well as provision of school lunch services are all part of that graph. Again, that is the $5.149 million for all sources of revenue, whether they are state, federal, or local, or county. The next graph takes a look at that administrative function from a state statutory standpoint. I'd like to also take a look at the fact that when you combine the expenditures for student services, and this includes everything from librarians, counselors, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, and nurses that all provide direct services to students, then the percentage of expenditure for those services and direct instruction is 73% of our budget. Then if we look at some of the other areas, such as administration, which is defined statutorily to include, rather than building or site instructional leadership or the principal, that includes only district level administration. And we'll take a closer look at that in just a moment. When we analyze that 3.67% that's district level administration, this is how it breaks out. Directors, consultants, coordinators, supervisors, and other administrators, about 59%. The superintendents and assistant superintendents, about 4%. And then staff for the Board of Education, about 5.5%. Staff for the superintendent's or assistant's offices, about 30% of that 3.67%. Okay, the next slide compares all forms of compensation for Oklahoma teachers to both the nation and our region. This doesn't leave out anything. Everything from Social Security to the fringe benefit allowance that pays for health insurance, to salaries, to paid teacher retirement contributions. When you look at ours compared to the national average, you can see why we are ranked 48th in the nation. The average salary increase for the nation during the time period since 2008 was 12.7%. Oklahoma's was 3.9%. No surprise why we're having difficulty competing with surrounding states for teachers. Okay, the next graph illustrates how long teachers are staying in the profession. This is becoming increasingly problematic in recruiting and maintaining properly certified staff.
I think you went forward two there. You might want to back up one.
Sorry about that. Thank you, sir. I'm not looking at my screen. This illustrates basically that the average tenure right now for teachers during this time period is 6 years over this 13-year period. About 46% stay 1 to 5 years, about 27% stay 6 to 10 years, and another 26% stay 11 to 13 years. So people are not staying in the profession, probably because they can make additional money elsewhere. Okay, the next one is, to me, one of the most alarming statistics, and that is the fact that in 2012, there were only 32 emergency teacher certificates granted by the State Department of Education. And in 2018, in the first half of this year, we've already granted 1,850 emergency certifications for people that are not properly certified to teach the subjects that they are now emergency certified to teach. Okay. Another question that has come up frequently in the last few weeks has been the fact that there has been growth in the area of teacher assistants, teachers' aides, and paraprofessionals. And in fact, this graph illustrates that that growth has been one of the fastest, with about 22.6%. And the reason for that is that that is a way to provide people to assist in the classroom when properly certified teachers are not available. Believe me, if we could hire properly certified people, that's who we would have in the classroom. With that, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions you might have. This is a very quick overview. All of these slides were taken right out of the State Department of Education's most recent proposal to the state legislature for its budget and the budget for common schools, which are pre-K through 12 schools here in the state of Oklahoma. It does illustrate the situation that we're in. It is serious, and I think that's one of the many reasons we are in the position that we're in as a state, facing a possible work stoppage.
Questions for Carl?
I do. I have a question, Carl. On this slide number maybe 6, district recurring revenue.
Yes.
There it says the state revenue is the 2.797, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then go forward to slide 32 is what it shows, I guess, where it says statewide district expenditures by OCAS.
Okay.
And then it shows instruction is 2.849 or 2,849,000.
Right.
So am I just reading that correctly, where our state is not even providing us with enough to pay just our instructional piece that we're paying?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
State appropriated.
Okay, very
Correct.
good, thank you. And I have another comment. Thank you to all those in the audience that stuck around for that, because finance is confusing to everybody, especially school finance, and it's not the most exciting, but right now I'm very proud that you all are in this room listening to this so that we can all work together. Thank you.
Well, and I just wanted to say what Tori did too. I'm so glad you're here tonight. Carl, is there any way you could present this to our legislators?
We did at the breakfast. 2 of the 4 that we normally invite were there Friday
Only
morning.
2, yes. Well, I wish they could all see this, but as accustomed as they are to dealing with numbers, large numbers, small numbers, mainly large numbers, I often wonder when they see these numbers if they can ever look past the numbers to see the individual children who don't get the help they need when they need it. And, you know, that's what we're really concerned about, and we know how much difference it makes. So really thank you for what you're doing, and for all of you in the audience for what you're doing too.
I do plan to email it to those that were not able to attend on Friday. So.
Good summarization. Thank you, Carl.
I also just want to add, if we could send that out to all of our staff, because I know that all of us are calling and knocking on doors and emailing so that we can have all that information at our fingertips.
Yep, we can email that out.
Be glad to. Okay, moving along, I have 2 other things I'd like to share with you in regards to
Can you pull that mic a little closer, Carl?
Sure. I'll try to talk a little louder too. I would just like to point out that in looking at our monthly finance report, if you'll look at the one-line summary that came out via email, of course, the rest of the pages behind that are all backup information with much more detail for each of the lines in this one-line summary. But we do currently have approximately $17 million cash on hand, and the reason for that is that we just received our next to the last large ad valorem payment. If you recall, we get our second largest source of revenue comes to us in payments in January through basically the month of March, and then we're finished receiving ad valorem tax for the rest of the fiscal year. So that also underscores and underpins why we've developed a fund balance. Part of it is because our revenue doesn't come in nice monthly payments. It comes in big chunks, the largest of which is our second largest source of revenue. And so we are doing 2 things right now. We're receiving that ad valorem tax, but we are also accruing for summer pay for teachers and other school year employees that do not work during the summer, but we divide their paycheck into 12 payments. So a lot of that cash will begin disappearing very quickly at the end of the year when we issue all of those summer payments by the end of our fiscal year, which is June 30th. That's one of the things that makes school finance kind of a strange animal. We get lots of large lumps of money in from ad valorem taxes around shortly after Christmas, and then we make some huge expenditures. We actually run 3 payrolls almost back to back in the month of May to meet our obligation to pay out those summer paychecks before the end of the fiscal year. So just wanted to remind everybody why that large cash balance is sitting there in our general fund. The other thing that I would like to call your attention to is that at your place there should be several additional tabs beginning with Fund 31 and running through Fund 50. Those are additional detailed budget pages and messages regarding our bond funds, which is the 30 series in OCAS, and our endowment fund, which is Fund 50. So please add those to your budget binders, starting with where we left off. They go in the back of the book, in other words. And at the risk of making this meeting run a long time, I won't go through a lot of what I provided for you in writing, but there's an introduction to each of those sections I encourage you to read. And if you have questions, please bring those to the next meeting, or call me or email me, and I'd be glad to try to help explain that. I will be presenting 2 more sections for our Garfield County Education Facilities Authority expenditures, which represent the largest amount of the construction that is currently going on. Of course, those are revenue bond funded, and we are paying mortgage payments on those revenue bonds with our general obligation bonds that Dr. Floyd referred to earlier that we'll be selling in May. Those will be to make this next fiscal year's payments on our construction that has already taken place, or in some cases that is underway currently. So that being said, I would be more than happy to answer any questions you might have about finances, and if not, I would appreciate approval of the monthly finance report.
Second.
Motion by Willa Jo, second by Matt. Any discussion? Sorry, Tori. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to item C, the discussion and possible action to approve the contract for new Enid High School band uniforms. The request for this proposal was issued on February 16th, and bids were received on March 8th at 10 a.m.
Been working on this for 2 or 3 months, and I'll turn it over to Carl to talk about the end result.
Well, it's my pleasure to turn this over to
Sam. Dr. Robinson. Did I tell y'all that Sam finished his doctorate? So it is officially Dr. Robinson.
Well, I'm just happy Carl finally let me talk to you guys for just a minute. So it's kind of like turning the classroom over to the student teacher, you know.
There you go.
Anyways, it has been almost 10 years since the last band uniforms were purchased in a large quantity, and we have solicited that out for bids. And we received our low bid, and from a very prestigious band uniform maker, so I don't want anybody to think that low bid means low quality in this case. But our bid came from Fruhoff. We have a nice uniform upstairs. Somebody would like to see it after the meeting is over. And that bid is for $130,897.25 for 275 new EHS band uniforms. And we are seeking your approval to proceed with that purchase.
Move we approve.
Motion by Tori, second by Trent. Any discussion?
I'll just say a word of explanation about that. While that is a large sum of money, if you extrapolate that and divide it out over the 10 years or so that is the lifespan of band uniforms, it's pretty, gets to a much lower number per year, but much needed, and you have to replace those uniforms regardless of what the activity is ever so often, so it's time again for Enid High band uniforms. So we're happy to make that recommendation to you guys tonight.
I have one question before we vote. What happens to the old uniforms? Are they sold to a smaller school district, or, I mean, how do we handle that?
What have we been doing, Carl?
I'll let Sam speak to it.
The way it's been handled with our middle school uniforms, which is the last ones that kind of went out of use, they were sold, or sometimes you just have to give them away because they are well used, well worn, and many times fitted uniforms. So it'll just kind of be up in the air to see what we have come at us, and if we can sell them, we will. If we need to hand them down to somebody else in the district that needs them, then that's what we'll do with them.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to item D, the discussion and possible action for contract change order number 1 to Taft Renovation Addition.
All of our construction contracts have contingencies built into them. Fortunately, these are for unforeseen circumstances, and there were not enough unforeseen circumstances in the Taft project to utilize all of the contingencies. So the project is now complete, and this change order is actually a reduction in the contract price of $4,196. So it's our pleasure to recommend approval of this contract reduction, and congratulations to Henson Construction Company for doing such a good job.
Absolutely, yeah, and Mr. Shuck guarantees us that we will see more of that in the future. Is that correct, Mr. Shuck?
Say yes.
Just nod your head, yeah. It's okay. Thank you. My point was that you have, yeah, she's over there talking about her project, I know. Yeah. But my point was that you have guaranteed us that we'll see more of that money being returned for budgets coming well under the budget, correct? Or we'll try. Okay, we'll try. Maybe that's what he said. Yeah.
I move we approve.
Motion by Tori, second by Matt. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item E, the discussion and possible action to approve the report of the independent audit of fiscal year 2017 transactions. Back to you, Mr. White.
Got Pat Carroll here. He's here to present the annual audit. We see him about this time every year, and this is his, what, number 2 board meeting of the night?
Yes.
Yeah, went to Tonkawa the first part of the evening, and now he's here, so appreciate you coming, Pat.
Better than last Monday, there were 3.
Oh, wow.
While I speak, I would like for you all to sign a form for me. I have to have proof that I was here. I'm required to be here. The state requires it, the federal government requires it, the State Department of Education requirement, but the State Board of Education wants proof that I'm here, so I'll have you sign.
Okay, we can do that.
Before I'll start, I'll say one more thing. The old uniforms, you have to declare them as surplus before you can get rid of them.
Okay, all right, duly noted.
That's just an auditor statement.
Okay, duly noted.
This is the audit for the 2016-17 year. There are 3 letters here because you spent more than $750,000 in federal money. The first letter, or our report actually, is on page 4, 5, and 6. It's the financial audit report. It deals over the financial statements itself, their presentation, what's included in them, and it's an unqualified opinion. That's what you want. Qualified opinion means we found something wrong either way it was presented or what's stated within the financial statements. And it's on a modified cash. It's a regulatory basis of accounting. It's not on an accrual basis that the federal government wants, so there is a qualification in there for the federal government. But the state of Oklahoma wants you on the regulatory basis. It's a very conservative basis. It's not your money. You want it to be conservative. There are 3 financial statements. There's an Exhibit A, B, and C. Exhibit A is a balance sheet. It shows the different governmental fund types you have: general, special revenue, debt service, capital project, and your trust and agencies, which is the gift and endowment, and all your activity fund subaccounts. You also have 2 informational columns as general long-term debt and the total memorandum column. But it shows the cash or the cash equivalents on hand or any investments that are with those different funds. It shows the liabilities within each one of the funds, whether they're warrants payable or reserves for encumbrance. A reserve for encumbrance is a purchase order that you all have approved by June 30, but we have not received those goods and services. You cannot obligate in 1 year and then pay it out of the next year, so that money has to remain in that year to be paid from those funds. Also, it shows any amount that is due to the activity funds or general obligation bonds payable. The fund balances then are broken into restricted and unassigned. Unassigned is what goes through the general fund. That's where you do your general operations. You're going to pay salaries, you're going to pay utilities, you're going to pay for supplies, materials, and general operations. Everything else is restricted for the purpose of that fund, whether it's building funds, child nutrition, your debt service, or your capital projects. But it shows the fund balances for each one of those funds, and that's what moves forward into the next year for your appropriation coming forward. You add the fund balance to the liabilities, it'll come up to what your total assets are. Exhibit B is an income statement. And I'm going to talk and I'm going to keep going because once it gets in my head, it comes out. So if you have a question, please go ahead and ask then. Exhibit B is an income statement. It shows the governmental fund types. It does not show your trusts and agencies because those are trusts that you hold for other groups. So it's not showing up here in your income statement, but it does show up on your balance sheet. It shows the revenues collected by the major sources for each fund, the major types of expenditures for each fund, and then the excess of revenues collected over or under expenditures. You had an increase in your general fund, which I might say Carl brought up is really good because right now that's hard to do. Your state incomes are going down, your federal incomes have not come up, they've gone down, and your expenses always go up. So you've done a real good job as a district to make sure that you had an increase in your fund balance. Special revenue, we had an increase. We had an increase in debt service. That's only going to happen when you vote new bond issues because you have to collect money for 2 years before you start paying off those bonds because you don't have any money in there to do that with. Your capital project shows that we had a decrease, but if you look further down under the other financing sources, we actually had an increase because we sold bonds of $8,175,000. We had adjustments into the general and the special revenue for encumbrances that we had in the previous year. I said those monies had to remain in the year that you approved them, but if those get canceled and you're not going to use those items, we don't lose them, we move them forward to the current year. We also had some other financing sources in the general fund. We had some stopped warrants that were brought forward. Those are warrants we issued, but they weren't cashed, so we can stop those after 1 year or void them. We also had some transfers in and transfers out, and that deals with monies that are going back and forth into the activity funds and child nutrition. Then we had an increase in our general fund, special revenues, and our debt service. We add that to last year's fund balance, and we get the money that was brought forward into the current year. Exhibit C is budget to actual. You show two. We have an original budget and then a final budget. Your original budget's what's set up on your estimate of needs. It's what allows you to spend money. You can only spend the money that you budgeted. If you collect more money and it's not put into your budget, you can't spend it. There were no supplements in the general fund or the special revenue or debt service, so we did not come to you as a board to say we need some additional money, and you have to approve it. It can't just be placed into your appropriation. It's brought to the board, and the board approves these extra monies to be spent. But again, the actual columns is what I just showed you on Exhibit B for those different fund types. Notes to financial statements are next. They're going to run through bottom page number 7 through 17. A lot of information. If you're new to the board, read it. It tells you a lot about your district. It's real tough reading.
Trent, we're going to have a test on this here in a little bit, so you might want to start studying.
Just go on by. Okay. But it's there's a lot of information in here. It tells you a lot about your district. One of the areas that I do want you to look at is going to be on page 12 and 13. Bottom page numbers. Actually 11, 12, and 13. This deals with your general long-term debt. It's going to talk about the bonds that you have and when they'll pay. You can see we have one bond in 2016 that'll pay in June of 18. You have the bonds of 2017 that will pay out in June of 19. And then we have our Garfield County Facilities Authority that we've done a lease purchase through. It shows how these bonds will sell and when you're going to pay them out. These bonds are going to sell in sequential years. So that you're going to sell one, you'll collect money, you'll pay that off, then you'll sell another one. Why you've done this is so you can actually do the construction you've got going on. You can only spend money, capital expenditures, through the building fund or through a bond fund. You collect 5 mills. Carl just told you about that, what you collect on your building fund. You don't collect enough money in your building fund to do any construction. You can collect enough money in there to maybe do some maintenance, but that's about it. So you've sold these bonds over a period of time so you can get the money all in at once through the lease purchase. You can do your projects and then you'll pay up for it over a period of time, keeping the ad valorem levy about the same. Since you've sold it out over that period of time, it doesn't increase for the constituents, what they're having to pay. It stays level, and you get a good project because you've got all the programs that you've developed and all the construction you've done with the money that you would not have had unless you did this. I don't always like to say good things about how the board does it, but you did a good job. The other area that I want to talk to you about, when you sell these bonds, people want to know if you have any hidden liabilities. The place that you might have a hidden liability would be in a retirement. On page 8 or 16, it talks about your teacher retirement. It says that you do have teacher retirement, but you're not holding it. It's given to the state of Oklahoma. You pay this money in, they hold it, and they have the money there for the teacher's retirement. The last paragraph down there shows that this last year you paid in $4,800,000 into teacher's retirement through this district. After the notes, we have combining statements. I'll go through these quickly. A1 is for the special revenues. You have the building fund and you have your municipal tax. Shows the monies in each one of those funds, any liabilities are outstanding, and then what's restricted and what your total fund balance is. On A2, it deals with the bond funds. Mr. White told you about the number of bond funds you have. There's your bond funds that are still active. You have the combined purpose of 2016, a transportation bond, a 2013 general purpose that's still there. Then you have 2 GO bonds that are still operating, one from the 2010 and one from 2016. Shows the money on hand, any reserves you had, and then the restricted money for those projects. A3 deals with your activity funds, your trust accounts. It shows the different trust accounts you have, the amounts in each one of those, and what fund balances you have that are either obligated or just due to the activity funds. You can see you have a number of activity funds there. You also have a lot of money in those activity funds. This is our highest risk when we deal with activity funds because it's cash. That's one of the things we go in and we look at, and we look at fairly in depth. And in the past, we've had comments about that. I'll tell you how those turned out in just a minute. I'll just make you listen to all the rest of this first. B1 is a combined statement for an income statement for your building and municipal tax. It shows the revenues that were collected, the expenditures that were made. You can see the building fund had a decrease. You had projects going on. You spent some of your building fund money. You have those projects. You're going to spend some of your building fund money for those items. You also have a municipal tax that had an increase in it. That's the tax that comes from the city of Enid from a municipal tax fund that they formed, I forget how many years ago, but it was a number of years back. This is about done. There's not much money coming into this anymore. It has to also be spent on capital projects. You can't just spend it for something else. It was set up for capital projects, and it affected every school district that touched the city of Enid. So everybody got some money. You just got the largest portion of it.
2018 is the last year for that, right?
B2 is a combining income statement for your bond funds, though. It shows the monies that came in for each bond fund, the monies that were spent for each one of the different bond funds, the excess of revenues collected or over or under the expenditures. You can see we had a decrease in the building fund in 2016, the transportation bond, but then we sold more bonds, so we had an increase of $855,000. Take that from what we spent, we ended up with an increase of $10,000 in there. We also had a decrease in our 2003 bond fund and in our 2010 general revenue bond fund. Schedule C is a combining budget to actual for the building fund and child nutrition. The last column over there, the schedule, the total shows up on Exhibit C for special revenues, but then it shows the individual accounts of the building fund and the municipal tax, what was collected and what was spent and what our fund balances are. Schedule 1 deals with your federal programs. Left-hand side shows the different federal programs that you have within the district. The last 5 columns or 6 columns then deal with the monies that are associated with each one of those federal programs. We started the year with an accrued balance of $421,000. That's money that we had not received from monies we'd spent in the previous year. The reason we hadn't received those is because we have to have a purchase order and a warrant written by June 2nd to collect these monies. We may have ordered supplies, we may have ordered materials, we also had salaries that we were paying out, so we did not have, may have had an encumbrance, but we did not have a warrant written by that time. If we don't have it into the state by June 2nd, we don't get that money until the next year. We did receive those monies in the succeeding year, but we don't get it by June 30. During the year, we collected $7,572,000 in federal money. We spent $7,584. At the end of the year, we had another $432,000 that was accrued to us to be received. We also show on their direct cost of $71,000 because this money goes into the state of Oklahoma on your OCAS coding. The OCAS coding does not show indirect cost. We're showing everything that was spent. The state's going to call back and say, hey, we don't match up with what's on OCAS. This tells them why it doesn't match up, because there are additional expenditures that we had, that we spent, that we claimed we were able to claim of $71,000, but does not show up on their money. The state wants to know what you spent. They just want to make sure that you spend everything you got. They don't want to know if you had to spend more, because you always spend more on these programs than what you've received. Starting on page 2, and I'm not going to go through each one of these, are your activity funds, but you might want to look at them. You can see how many sub-accounts you have within each one of them, because you have an elementary sub-account, you have a Waller sub-account, you have a Longfellow sub-account, you have a Emerson sub-account, you have one for Enid High School, you have one for lunch, you also have a gift one. Each one of these has a sponsor. Each one of these sub-accounts do. These sub-accounts have to, the sponsors have to do the same thing your treasurer does and your encumbrance clerk. They have to make sure that they receipt the money. The sponsor has to receipt the money that they brought in. They have to turn it in to the custodian on a daily basis. That deposit has to be made daily anytime there's $100 or more within that sub-account. So that means each sponsor has to do this on a daily basis and turn the money in. Make sure that it's turned in, there's a receipt, it's given to the custodian acknowledges, then they can make the deposit. Before they can spend money, they have to make a requisition. It's been approved by you how they can raise the money and how they can spend the money, but they have to turn in that requisition to make sure this is what's been approved. Also, do they have money in their sub-account, because they can't use money from one other sub-account to pay for what they want. When that requisition's approved, and it has to be say what they want, it can't just say materials or supplies. It's listed on there. They should have a dollar amount of what they're going to pay for this. Once they've done that, they can go ahead and make the purchase. Once the purchase is made, they have to have an itemized invoice that says everything that they received. It also is to be signed by the person who received those goods or services. In case we want to know where they are, we can't find them, we have to know who we're going to ask for that. This is a requirement by the state of Oklahoma. But you can see you have a number of these accounts, and you have a number of dollars that go through these accounts. Again, this is our highest risk. It's cash. That's why these requirements are there. Why do we have to make each one of these sponsors turn the money in? If the money doesn't get turned in and it's stolen, something happens to it, who's responsible? School never received it, they're not responsible. Parent, the student is not responsible. They already gave it to them. It'd be the teachers who are responsible. So they need to make sure they're turning it in. It's a proactive item for them to make sure that nothing happens to them and they're not having a problem with it. You can see in the high school, if you go to page 6, Schedule 6, page 3 of 6, because you have over 2 pages of sub-accounts in the activity fund for the high school. We collected $995,000 and we spent $861,000. There's a lot of money that goes through just the high school. The other schools have dollars, a number of dollars also, just not that much. I'm trying, you've been here a long time, you've heard a lot of financial information. I'm trying to go through some of this. But you can look at the different activity funds, and you have an account for each one of those, showing the different sub-accounts. It'll show whether they reconcile and also talk about the cash statements within them. If you go to page 18, it's our second letter. It's after all the activity funds. This is our independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance and other matters. The first one, we dealt with your financial statements. This is when we deal with everything else. We're going to look at your purchase orders. We're going to look at the invoices you have. We're going to look at your receipts, the receiving, the monies that come in. Are they placed in the right fund in the right year? Are they coded correctly? There's just a number of items we look at. We look at your payroll. We look at your teacher retirement. We look at inventories. We look at the federal programs. Make sure that they're being handled correctly also. There's a lot of things we go through. This year we found one item we brought to the attention of the administration that we consider to be a deficiency, needed to be corrected. It wasn't a material amount, but it's something that needs to be taken care of and needs to be corrected. Page 20 is our third letter. This is when we talk about the compliance of each of the major federal programs and internal control. We have to come in and look at the different federal programs you have, the major programs or anything that's over $750,000. Of all the programs you have, we have to look at least 40% of those dollars that are spent. This year we looked at one specific program. It was your child nutrition. That was your largest dollars. It was 40% by itself, so we went through it. We looked at a number of items with it. There were no problems, no material misstatements, and there were no significant deficiencies within the federal program itself. On page 22 and 23, we're going to talk about what findings we had. At the very top, you can see type of auditor's report issued. It says adverse. I told you had an unqualified opinion. You do for the state of Oklahoma. For the federal government, it's adverse because we're on a regulatory basis of accounting. It's not how the financial statements are shown or what's said. It's just how it's presented. We had one item that was considered a significant deficiency in internal control. We had no problems with any of the federal awards that we dealt with. You can see the program that we identified was the child nutrition program. The one item that we had a problem with was under 1701 under financial statement findings. It was all receipts were deposited but not posted to a ledger. School activity lunch fund was not reconciled to the bank on a monthly basis. We had one item where there were a receipt that was received and was deposited, but for whatever reason it did not show up in the ledger. It's not something that was missing, it just didn't show up there. We had a couple of different other adjustments that also were not made to the ledger. It would have been caught if this had been reconciled on a monthly basis. It was not reconciled. It's a requirement that the district reconcile each month the activity fund. They give you a report on the activity fund each month. It should be on your packet. Child nutrition, the small account, is an activity fund. It's to be reconciled also. That is a requirement for the activity fund. For whatever reason, you don't have to hear a report from your district treasurer each month, but the state says you will have a report from your activity fund each month. And I think the biggest reason is because at the first of the year you approve your sub-accounts, you approve how they can raise the money and how they can spend the money, but you don't really see much of that after that because the custodian's taking care of it. So you're to receive a report each month on what your activity fund is. Last year we had several different items we brought to your attention. One had to do with pre-numbered receipts were not being utilized by all the activity fund sponsors. That was corrected during the year. That's been taken care of, except for the one item that I just told you about. We also had pre-numbered tickets for the district fund events were not being retained. They have to turn out tickets whatever the event is, whether it's athletics, debate, some other program. If they're selling tickets, we have to know how many tickets were sold, adult and a student, and it has to be retained until after the audit's done. They were not being done. That has been done this year. It's been corrected. It's being taken care of. We also had activity fund requisitions, which were dated after the invoice. That was also taken care of this year. It was corrected. You've had a lot going on. I tried to go through this quickly. If you had any questions or if you have any, I'd be more than happy to deal with them. Carl brought up some real good statements for you on how your money's collected. You had a fund balance at the end of the year. You need a fund balance at the end of the year, even though we're a nonprofit group or we're not here to gain a income. You don't start the year with any money coming in. Talked about your ad valorem. It doesn't come in until January and April. You don't get state aid until probably a month or two into the year. So you have to live off of what you carry over and start the year with. And right now, what you've done is really good because you've increased what those fund balances are while your state revenue is going down, your federal revenue is going down. It's something just to keep in mind and watch, because we don't know when that's going to change. That's kind of my political statement for the day.
I just want to make a quick comment because we have so many staff in the room today, and I know that many are watching at home. You complimented us on our fiscal responsibility and how we were able to grow our fund balance in really turbulent times, and that is because of all of you guys taking on additional responsibilities in your buildings, staying late, going early, and going above and beyond, that we were able to do that. So just, you're all here. I want to let you know we appreciate it.
And I will make a final comment while Pat's up there. You know, any 6A school district like ours is a big business, and we're obviously dealing with a lot of money, and so to have only one finding on this particular audit of all receipts were deposited but not posted in the ledger to what was it, school activity lunch fund, out of a $70 million budget is just really an outstanding audit. So obviously Carl and his shop get great credit for that, and it's about to be turned over to Dr. Robinson, so don't screw it up.
And it does take a lot of effort, because you have to tell a lot of people a lot of times what they're supposed to do.
That's right.
On that note, I noticed, of course, Dr. Robinson's name is not on the surety bond list yet. We might want to double that for the first year. You and Carl are at 100,000, so
yeah,
I don't know what we feel like.
Yeah,
the initiation year we might want.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe $1 million or something. I don't know. But Pat, we appreciate your continued good audit work year to year, and again, Carl, congratulations to you and your shop for another outstanding financial audit. Recommend approval.
Move we approve.
Second.
Everybody's fighting over this one. Motion by Kyle, second by Willa Jo. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Oh, did you have discussion? Oh, okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Pat. Did you get the signatures you needed? Got the signatures you need? Yes. All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you coming.
And it looks like there was no new business, so we'll go down to our reports. Are there any board comments and or questions tonight? Okay, I'll move down to our next regular meeting is going to be Monday, April 16th, 2018 at 6 p.m. right here in this room. And then I'll move down to discussion and possible action to approve entering into executive session to discuss the items listed in the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tori, second by Kyle. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll go to executive session. Thank you.